So our goal for today is our top edging. So I just did this at period 4. This is what it looks like. Your top edging is done. So I chose one group, I grabbed their top, and I glued edging to it. So what we're going to cover today is the stock breakout procedure. We're going to cover a couple of measurements. We're going to do it. I'm going to cut them. I'm going to joint them, plane them, table saw them. We're going to cut them to finish length, and we're going to glue them onto a top. All in about 45 minutes. And then you guys will have about 20 minutes to do the quiz afterwards. So let's do it. I'm going to leave the pin here and I make sure that I have a tape measure and a square. Safety glasses, hearing protection, and we're ready to go. Let's go find some wood that's at least 19¼ inches long, inch and 3/8 wide, and 3/4 inches thick. Okay, we are going to a miter saw. Okay, really simple. This is a cut end. This is kind of a rough end. I don't see any checks in it, but it has got a pretty good some hardwood in it, and I'm not liking this, so I'm going to use that to get rid of. So I'm going to mark to my 19¼ Now this is 19½. You could just leave it and carry on, but for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to cut 19¼ just so we're going through all the steps. All right. Roll up my scrap. We're ready to go to the jointer. Hello. Get on there. Okay, jointer time. So we're going to do a surface, we're going to do an edge. Okay, next, rough width. So, done step 1, done step 2. We're going to move on to step 3, which is cut the rough width. So rough width, we're going to use a table saw for that. Now, something to note about this is this piece here has a jointed edge. This piece here no longer has a jointed edge. It's just been table sawn. Let's see. Okay, so it's been table sawn. This edge is not jointed anymore. I still have a jointed surface. I can see from the giant check mark here. But now my edge has some table saw burns on it. What should I do? Back to the jointer for this piece before I cut it again. Carry on. Get on with it. Okay, back to the jointer. Okay, I got an extra piece that's going to go underneath here in our offcuts bin. And I have my 3 pieces for my top edging, 2 sides and a front. We're going to go over to the big planer. Can you hear me now? Okay, planer time, big green planer. Okay, so I've got check mark, check mark. I've got check mark, check mark. I got check mark, check mark. So we're good to go. That's a good thing. Now, we use a planer at 1.25 to do our finish width. So our finish width is 1.25, which is also 32 millimeters. You're going to need to know that for the quiz. Get rid of this chat here. So 32 millimeters on our big green planer here, it says is 92. So on the counter, 92 doesn't really mean anything as a number. It's just a reference point for where the table is. So 32 millimeters, 1.25. Why did I do width first? If I do thickness first and it gets skinny, I go to turn it up and do it this way. It gets a little bit wobbly. So I always do my width first and then I'll do my thickness. Check mark side down. So I'm going to set the counter at 32 mils, which is 92 on this machine. So my counter, I'm going to set to 92. Bring my table way down. There we go. Now I only left a little bit, so I can take all that off in one pass. So check mark down. I'm going to take all that off in one pass. Dust collection. Our next step is thickness. So I'm going to set my planer thickness to 3/4, which is 19 mils or 42. Now, this is still pretty thick, so I'm going to set it at 52 and then 47 and then 42. I'm going to do 2-3 cuts. That way I'm not overloading the planer. Okay. Now, how do you know which numbers to go to, Mr. Warren? So my count is at 42. I just add 10. It gives me a little bit of extra room on top, so I'm not cutting it all out at once. So if I add 10, I'm going to make a cut at 52, which is just a number on my planer. It doesn't mean anything measurementally. Just 52, and then I'll go another 5. I'll go 47, then I'll go down another 5, which is 42. 42 equals 3/4. So if I'm doing really precise measurements on my tape measure, students love to do this while they're listening to me talk, don't you? So instead of using the hook end, I'm going to use some random inch, and I'm going to set, where's my camera? Set my random inch at the edge, and then I'm going to use that as a reference point because it's not wiggly like the hook is. It's set in stone. So I've got 3/4 of an inch thickness, and I've got 1.25 inch width. Okay, so 1.25 inch by 3/4. These are ready to go. We're ready to do our final step, which is finish length. So I found a top to glue to. No chatting in the chat. You guys are going to make me self-conscious here. At least I tape mine together. Okay, so we got our 3 edges. We've got our length, which goes across the top. So we had this conversation at the beginning of cabinetry that our flow of grain direction on our cabinet goes up the sides and across the top. So my grain direction has to go across from side to side that way. Make sure you don't run your grain direction from front to back. The students do this, and then they go to put it on their top, and it looks really funny because the bottom of their cabinet's sticking out the back because the length is shorter than the width. So we have to go across this way, okay? And our front piece is gonna go on the front. We're gonna do that last. So we're gonna stick to our sides first. So a little note here, what's gonna be easier? A question on your quiz is gonna say, how do we measure? How do we measure? Well, we measure in place. We don't use our cutting bill. We don't use a tape measure. You can just measure it right in place. Get it up against your top and make a mark. So there's a couple ways to do this. I can butt these up at the back, make a mark, and then miter outwards because we have miters on the front, same as your base. But it's really tricky. And some of you learn that cutting miters accurately can be really tricky. So instead, we're going to do it in reverse. I'm going to cut these miters at some random spot, and then I'm going to mark the square cuts at the back in place and cut those last. So a square cut is easier to cut than a miter cut very accurately. So we're just going to go miter these suckers. And while we're at it, why don't we put a miter on one end of our front as well? That'll save us a little bit of time later. Okay, so we have miters and we have butt ends. I'm going to turn this around. The back of this is kind of ugly. Okay, so easier to do. I can get my miters just perfect here. Doot, doot. Get them, dial those in right on the corner, and then go to the back and make a mark here. Now, if I'm worried about it moving, I can start grabbing some clamps. And we're going to make a mark for our finished length. So our finished length is a straight cut, which is a lot easier to do than a miter cut, as I already said. So I can take these and I can make them a little bit nicer to look at with my square. That was creepy. All right, so we got our sides in place. We're going to clamp this, and we're going to measure our front in place to fit. So that's one of the questions on the quiz is how do we measure our edging? Well, it's got to be in place. It's got to be in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp this one piece right where I want it. I'm going to bring this guy in tight So they fit real nice. And then I'm going to mark this end. Okay. My mark with the light out so that I can actually see it. Okay, so what are we going to do with this mark? I'm going to transfer this mark up to the top. And then I'm going to make sure my miter goes outwards, not inwards. Otherwise, it's going to be too short. Okay. Well, I got my miter now. He's yakking in the chat. Will we finish in time? Oh, yeah. We're going to be done in like 15 minutes. If you guys stop talking, you'll be done even faster. Okay. When you're fitting between two pieces, so I have my two side edging pieces, and this is going to fit perfectly in between them. I'm going to start with my cut a little bit long. I'm going to come back and I'm going to put it in place and see how long it is. I'm going to take a little bit more off. I'm going to take 2 or 3 cuts to get it just right. If I cut right to my mark, I come back and it's too short, I'm hooked, I'm screwed, okay? So when you're doing cuts that are in between two pieces that have to fit just so, cut them a little long to start and then start nibbling away. Otherwise, if you cut too short, you're going to have to put some wood filler in there because I'm not giving you a whole new piece. It's too expensive. So we're going to go to the miters now. Okay, so not bad, but it's a little long. Long is better than short because you can't add wood. This ain't welding, folks. So I'm going to trim this just a little bit more. Like I said, this might take you 3 cuts, and that's okay. Because you want it just right. No gaps. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that fit. I like that. Okay, so my corners are nice. I'm happy, and there's no gap in between here, okay? So now we're ready to glue. I have my 3 pieces, and I'm ready to rock. Oh, YouTube. Yeah. Okay, jokers. Okay, so I need everything that I need for gluing. I need to get it here. So one of the questions on your quiz is, what do you do to get ready for glue up? We're going to do a dry fit. We're going to make sure we've gathered all our clamps. We're going to have paper towel. We're going to have glue. We're going to have some paper underneath to protect our table. So another question on the quiz for you is, what do you need to do to get ready for glue ups? 2, 4, 5, 6 clamps that I had on my last glue up from period 4. So I'm going to gather those and we're going to get started. Now, in order to make this fit a little bit better, these guys are quite a bit higher because they're 1 1/4. This is only 3/4 material. This is to give the illusion of a nice thick top. But it's harder to glue because this is my good side. So I don't want it sticking up. I want it flush here. So I'm going to put a piece of 1/2 material underneath this. This 1/2 material is going to get these pieces pretty close so that when it comes time to glue, at least I don't have to fight it a whole bunch. So I'm going to grab some 1/2. Okay. 1/2. 1/2. What the heck are you talking about, Mr. Lawrence? That's what I'm talking about. Just get it really nice and close for you so that when you got to glue, it's only a little bit of being finicky before we have to glue it together. Now we're still going to do a dry fit, of course, because that's what we do. Okay, so I'm going to get these guys close. I'm going to get the snug. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that fit. I've closed up the gaps. This is a little bit higher. This is a little bit higher in the middle, but it meets at the corners, which is important. I can sand down the rest to meet. So I'm happy with my dry fit. We're ready to glue. So that's why we take the time to do a really good job when we're jointing and planing our material. If it's not flat, if it's not square, when you go to put this all together, it's going to be wonky as hell. You're going to find gaps everywhere, and you're going to be like, what did I do wrong? And I'm going to put a square on it, or I'm going to put it on a flat top, like the jointer table or the table saw table. You're going to go, it's not even straight, right? Now, this will even happen if you joint and plane one day and then you come back a few days later and you go to glue, your pieces start to do this or they start to do this. That's really nice to glue the same day as you plane, because otherwise you're going to find your pieces start to warp a little bit, unfortunately, and that's just reality. Okay, so we don't need glue on this whole thing because what we're gluing to is only 3/4. So all I'm going to put glue on is my 3 sides and my corners, because I want my corners to meet. I want my corners to glue together really nice. So that's what I'm going to glue. Let's get started. I need a cameraman. Couldn't one of you stay here and chance getting the Rona? Oh, it's plugged. Biscuits. The end of my pen. Now I'm using white glue. White glue gives me a little bit more time to wiggle. It gives me about 1.5 minutes. Yellow glue is for hardwood, which we are using hardwood, but it sets up a lot faster, and I find it's just not enough time. I find by the time I get this all together, even the white glue is getting a little sticky. So I like to use the white glue. It also dries clear, which is nice on my hardwood. And really, this is plywood, or sorry, this is softwood that's inside the plywood. They're softwood veneers. So I'm not really worried about using hardwood glue. It's a better hold, but at the end of the day, this is mostly for show. Your top edging is just to look at. It's not really, you're not going to be sitting in a car on top of it. Okay, so I got all my edges thoroughly glued. Set this guy back down, and I'm going to get the corners of my hardwood with my extra glue on my finger. Be okay. And hopefully put this together the same way that I took it apart. So that, now the one thing I'm going to change is I noticed this knot. I am going to put it on the bottom side just so it's a little bit hidden. It's still showing a little bit, but it's better than what it was. Yeah, so when you glue multiple parts, try to put them back together the same way that you had them, so that the fit is the same. Because their tops aren't always square. Sometimes things are just a little bit more custom than we'd like. Okay, so I haven't contacted anything yet. Now I'm putting my pieces together because I didn't want anything to start setting up before I was good and ready. Okay, so I'm going to get these sides on. Let me get them right where I want them, and then snug them up. Things are a little more slidery with glue on them. Keep that in mind. Sorry, there's a question in the chat. Can't really see it right now. Okay, flush, flush, quite happy. I'm just gonna snug everything. I'm not gonna get it real tight yet because I wanna be able to wiggle it if I need to. So all of these clamps are just baby, come back. So I'm gonna drop just a scotch. There we go. Nice and flush. We want it. Corners are meeting up. Ready to clamp it. Okay, so I got an extra clamp for this middle section. I got a little gap here, so I'm going to clamp them up. It's really nice that I have the time. In an hour, I can wait till this gets tacky and I can peel it off like a booger. Okay, so if you wait till it dries, it's, as you guys know, it's really tough to get off. But if you have the time, which you won't because you're only here for an hour ever, to wait till the glue dries, then you're not smearing the glue into the wood to try to get it off, and you're not scraping your plywood trying to get it off later when it's hard. So if you ever get into woodworking and you're doing some work on your own and you have the time, you'll just a little tip, just a little trick. Okay, so we have just over 15 minutes to complete the quiz. The quiz is going to cover things like rough length. What do we add? 1 inch. What is our finish width, finish thickness in millimeters and inches? You're going to need to know that. What are the steps? How do we measure our finish length? How do we figure that out? As well as our glue up. What does that look like? And there's 5 questions in total. If you have any questions, just email me, but I think you'll all ace it. It is multiple guess or true and false. So check it out, do it, get it done, and we'll see you this time tomorrow. Hi, just in the middle of recording a class here, guys. What do you need?
I need
Sorry?
Scotch.
Scotch?
No, Scotch.
Did you do Scotch?
Brian.
Welding. You're welcome. That's okay. Okay, we're looking for whiskey. These librarians, they love their booze.